Hi, this is Dave from JavaCodeJunkie.com, and in this video we're going to continue with our exploration of the JavaFX TableView Control. First up, we're just going to do a couple of items of housekeeping. The first thing is that I want to rename the Person TableView class to simply PersonView. So we'll right-click, click on Refactor, Rename, and we'll change that to PersonView. And then in main view, instead of calling it table, I'm going to rename this to PersonView. So again, right-click, Refactor, Rename. And now when we're adding records, we're adding them to the person view. So you don't need to know that there is an underlying table that's going to be displaying the record. Up till now, we've been programmatically adding and or removing records from the table. In this video, we're going to add a form that will allow us to interactively add new details to the person view. So let's go to the person view class and let's add 3 new private instance variables, one each for first name, last name, and age. And these are going to be text fields. Organize the imports. And let's go further down into the build UI method. And here we'll create the new text fields. And I want to wrap those in a horizontal box pane so that we'll add it now to the current container, which is a vertical box. So the vertical box is going to contain the table and now the 3 text fields. And after this, we're going to add a couple of buttons for add and delete. So let's create a new horizontal box. And now let's add those 3 text fields to that horizontal box. So hbox1 dot get children dot add all. First name, last name, and age. And we'll also add that to the person view. We're going to be adding a couple of buttons. Add and the delete button. And we'll create the buttons. And the buttons I'd like to have right aligned. So again, I'm going to wrap those in another horizontal box. So let's create one. And we'll also add the second horizontal box to our current class, which extends from vertical box. Add all. And let's run and see what we have. Right, so we do have the 3 new entry fields, the text fields, and we have the 2 buttons. So we need to add some spacing to these components to make them look nice. So in the horizontal box, the first horizontal box, we're going to set the spacing to 10 pixels. And we're going to set the padding. So padding is the spacing inside the perimeter of the horizontal box, and the spacing is the amount of space between different nodes that are in the horizontal box. We'll do the same for the second horizontal box. See how that looks. So it looks a little better, although here between these 2 horizontal boxes, we have double the amount of space that we'd normally like to have. So I'm going to go back and change the padding on the second horizontal box to have 0 pixels at the top. Let's see how that looks. Next, we want to right align these 2 buttons in the second horizontal box. So we'll set alignment is the method. And we'll pick the top right. Run, and we should see that. Now horizontal alignment is right. So for those 2 buttons are now at the right side. So let's go back and now add some more visual cues for these 3 text boxes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set something called prompt text in these 3 so that you can visually see what type of information you need to enter in each one of these text boxes. And I'm also going to set a tooltip so that when you hover over the field, it displays a message as to what should be entered. So up here to first name. We're going to say the prompt text is first name. For the last name field, it will be last name. And for the age field, it will simply be age. We'll run and we'll now see that there is a visual clue as to what is required to be entered into these 3 fields. So first name, last name, and age. Let's go back and add as well a tooltip. So again, first name dot set tooltip, new tooltip, and the text for the tooltip will say enter first name. We'll do the same for last name and age. Run and we'll see what that's all about. So now when we hover over, we get a tooltip that says what is expected to be entered into the field. I also like these buttons to be the same size, so I'm going to make a change to that to set the preferred width of both to be the same. The same for the delete button. run just to check to make sure that everything works as we expect. Add and delete. The buttons are now both 100 pixels in width. So now that we have the ability to enter information into these three text fields, we can now add some behavior to our add button so that when we have information entered, the add button can be clicked and the information can be entered into the table. In order to do that, we're just going to, for the button add, we're going to use the setOnAction method. And I'm going to create a new anonymous inner class. And add the unimplemented method for the event handler interface. Do some cleanup. The user is going to enter some information in the first name, last name, and age fields, and then click on the add button. The setOnAction method will then kick in, whereupon we will get the information that's been entered into these three text fields, create a new person object, and then we will call our add person method that we already created during our last video. So let's do that and make that a reality. So we'll create a new person object. And the person object expects a string first name, a string last name, and an integer age. We're going to get that information from the text field. So our text field, our first text field is called first name. And there's a method on the text field class called getText. So that will get whatever has been entered into the first name text field. We'll do the same for last name. And the age is a little different. Class expects an integer for the age, and the text field, actually, even though there are maybe numbers entered, it's still considered a string field, so we have to convert that. So we're going to use a method of the integer class, and that will parse, give us an integer from the string value that's actually entered into the age text field. In a production program, you would want to verify that you have some valid information and whatever those business rules would be, but at the very minimum that you have something that is a first name and a last name and an age. But we're going to stick to the basics of what we're trying to do. So now that we have the person, we can now call our add method, passing along the person object that we just created. So let's enter some information to ensure that our code is working properly. So click on the add button. The record was added, but it's still left behind in our text field. So let's create a new method to allow us to get rid of those. So we're going to call it private, since we're just going to call it from within this class. It doesn't need to be part of the public API. Clear fields. And we'll clear in order each one of the three fields in our form. So first name dot clear, last name dot clear, and age dot clear. Run one more time. Of course, it doesn't do any good if you do not call the method. So we're going to call the method here after the item has been added. So clear fields, and then run and give it a test. Click add the record to the table, and also clear the 3 entry fields. So that part works. But what we'd also like is a nice bit of functionality would be to set the focus back into the first name field so that the user didn't have to click with the mouse or with the tab key in order to get that field to have focus. So we'll automatically try to set the focus on the first name field. So in the clear fields method, we'll say first name dot request focus. Now let's see if that works. And there we are, ready for another entry. Next functionality that we would want to implement would be to our delete button. So it would allow us to select a row. Once the row has been selected, then click on the delete key, and we would expect that row to be deleted from our data. So let's implement that. Go back to our delete button, and we will also do a set on action with a new event handler that will allow us to delete the selected row from our table. Organize our imports, and we will add the unimplemented method, and again a quick cleanup. And so to delete, we need to go to the selection model and get the currently selected item. Now we have a single selection model so that there can only be one record selected in our table at a time. So let's use the selection model to get the currently selected element, or to get the currently selected row. Get selected index. And then we don't have a delete method at this point, so we're going to code one. But what it's going to be like is we're going to say delete, and we're going to pass along the integer which represents the index of the currently selected row in that table. So let's go down under our add method, and we will say public void delete integer row, which we're going to pass. And so in the delete method, we will say table.getItems.remove and specify the row that we would like to have removed from the table. And we should also do some defensive coding here in case the user has not selected a row and has simply chosen to click on the delete button. So let's wrap that in an if statement. So if row is greater than or equal to 0, then we'll remove it. Once it's removed, then I'll just show you how that runs and what another little issue is that we should address. So if we select one of the elements and click delete, the element is indeed deleted, but a new row is automatically selected for us. So I think it's the row below the one that we deleted, but in any event, it scrolled up and now becomes the row that is currently in focus. So what we want to do is clear the selection once the row has been deleted. So now back in our delete method, we'll say table.getSelectionModel clear selection. And that should take care of that issue. Let's run. It's always a good idea to run and run often and check to make sure that the code that you're writing is actually functioning the way that you expect. So let's again click on an element, click on the delete button. The element is deleted, but now there's no further row that is selected. So we can click delete all we want and nothing further is going to happen. In our next video, again, we're going to continue with our exploration of the table view, and we're going to look at customizing table cells. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I appreciate it. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments area below. All code for this project will be available on GitHub, and I'll also leave a link to that in the description below the video. I hope to see you in our next video, and until then, take care and keep on coding.